Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be walking you through a couple of basic building blocks of Azure AI. And since this is the first time we actually talk about Azure AI, I'm actually very excited to be here. I use my own email, I open up an Azure account, and I've been poking around the studio and noticed a couple of things that could be potentially extremely helpful for you. So first of all, obviously you can try it for free. This is the azure.microsoft.com website, and you can go explore the AI Studio. If you don't have account, obviously you need to click in to register account. Once you click in, you'll be able to see this kind of a user interface. Now, if you don't have a project, first thing to do is actually to create a new project by clicking on this button. You can have to give a name, and then you can have to create a new hub. So first thing to do is when you create a new hub, make sure that you have one that is tied up to your Azure subscription, as I have it here. So the reason is you want to have the access to OpenAI models, and if you don't have a subscription with the OpenAI service access opened, then you cannot access the OpenAI models. So first thing you can have to do is to get the subscription created, and you're gonna have to fill out a form. And once you fill out a form and get it submitted, it took just one night for me to wait for this email. So I will say overall, this is a pretty smooth access. Now, with that being said, let me go to my projects. Here are a couple of things I noticed. You want to start with a project, and once you go into the project, you'll be able to see this kind of user interface. The first thing that's interesting is this chat playground. The chat playground will able to give you a particular model, and you can actually type in anything you want. You can say, hey, tell me a joke, and then you'll be able to start chatting with the computer. Now, of course, this is nothing but just a API call via OpenAI's ChatGPT model or whatever model that you plug in here on the left-hand side. And the reason you're able to plug in here is because you actually have the model deployed. So let me go to deployments. That will be the next thing to talk about. You can see that here under this OpenAI connection, which is tied up to the subscription that I have a couple of models created. And if you don't have a model created, you can have to create a model by clicking this button, and you can pick whatever model that you want. So that will be something that you have to create if you want to build anything on top of that utilize that large language model. So with that being said, that's the model deployment. This gives you an endpoint to allow you to access a GPT model, and then you can go to chat, play around with it, and that's the basic setup. Now, on top of that, you actually can create a couple of things that's very interesting. First thing you can create is prompt flow. So prompt flow actually is kind of like a chain of thoughts or chain of abstraction. If you don't have one, you can use the create button to create a standard flow, or on top of the standard flow, you can actually explore their gallery. You can do a web classification, you can do a chat with Wikipedia, things like that. So as an example here, what I created is chat with Wikipedia, and you can pretty much have Wikipedia implemented in the backend, and you can talk to it just like you're talking to a Wikipedia. Now, on the right-hand side, I have this graph that's starting with the input. That is the input from whatever user entered. And then we'll have a couple of things. We have extract query from the question, and we actually have this module here on the main panel on the left-hand side to walk you through how that's done. And as you can see here, we have system, we have user, and then a couple of examples, and then we have the conversation history. Now, this is just like a natural language, and so it's a pretty straightforward. On top of natural language, what's also interesting is they actually have Python functions inside. So for example, you can click on this building block called get wiki URL, and that actually has Python function inside that takes the entity of what you want to enter, kind of like a keyword, right? And then to go into Wikipedia to try to find that. So this is actually going to send a request to the URL using wikipedia.org. And then whatever response that we get back, obviously, we want to parse it, right? So standard library to do that is Beautiful Soup that will allow you to parse any HTML content into something that look pretty. Also, that is basically the content and gist of this function that I found interesting, that they actually have it built inside of this graph, which really is just a chain of thought because you have one thing invoking another. Once you have the results out from this first Python function, you can go into second one, search result, right? Go into your result, you can get whatever content you want to do. This function here says fetch text content from, and that's what that's doing. And then process it, right? And then in the end, you augment it in the chat. You add it in here using this curly bracket. Whenever you see a curly bracket in the system, that is a variable. And then in the end, till it gives you an output. And then you can actually talk to it and get some answers from Wikipedia using natural language. So prompt flow is one thing that I personally find very helpful. On top of that, you can create whatever you want. For example, here I have one that's just a joke and then it involves echo, meaning that it's going to repeat a joke. So something like that's interesting. It gives you chain of thoughts. So one last thing I want to show you guys is data. Under component, there is a module called data. And in this data module, you can actually create whatever you want. You can even create your own data. So as an example, I actually created a vector index dataset that is actually uploaded with a list of lecture slides. So these PDFs are what we're using in class. For example, capital budgeting under uncertainty, how does DCF approach change in this world, things like that. So if I want to get certain information from these documents, and as you can see, that one document is something like 25 pages. And then here we have 12, 13 lectures. So to skim through all of this is not easy. And instead of skimming through, what if I just want a particular topic, for example, asset pricing model, things like that, then I want to be able to use retrieval-based algorithm to get the content from one or multiple of these documents. And the way to do that is to create a vector index dataset under this data module here. So once that's created, you can actually go to chat and build that inside. So for example, you can click on the chat playground, and then under deployment, you see a system message, and then you also see this says add your data. So you click on that, you actually can find available projects index down here using this drop-down button. Since I already created one, I'm going to click on this, and that actually gives me all of the vector search. So I can click on this, and I can actually see the source data, which is all the PDFs I use as a lecture material. So with that being said, now let's go back to here. I can enter a question. So let's go to our PDF. Let's use an example. For example, what if I want to learn about game theory primer? I know that this game theory primer is in lecture 9 because that's a PDF name that I'm taking that topic from. So I can go into chatbot and I can say, what is game theory primer? And I hit Control Enter. Now this is going to search for that topic for me. So this is the things that I see. Game theory involves modeling of strategic behavior of self-interested individuals who interact with one another in an overall environment or game. And here you actually see this footnote 1. You can click on the reference and you'll be able to see that it actually comes from lecture 9. So that's where that is, and you can actually click on that. This will give you the citation. So it's pretty straightforward. It actually allows me to talk to my PDF documents. So this is a good building block, right? It gives you a retrieval-based algorithm, and you can augment your chat generation abilities. And on top of it, you also have prompt flow, right? Now you can imagine the power. You can combine this in all kinds of permutation, combination, whatever you want. You can talk to a document, you can get the numbers out using prompt flow to do some calculation for you because prompt flow has Python inside and things like that. And then last but not least, you can deploy a web app by clicking on this button. You're going to have to pinpoint the subscription as well as the pricing plan. And let me show you the pricing plan. I think this is when things get a little bit interesting. There are multiple virtual machines. They are 4:1 or 8:1 memory to core ratio. And then you can actually go to the app service pricing. So you can actually use a free tier, which is pretty cheap. And on top of that, if you're not satisfied with free tier, you can go to basic service and it charges like 1.8 cents per hour, which is not that bad. If you're going to stand up some sort of application service, you can go with that. It's actually not that expensive. And then you can, of course, use premium. It's going to be a bit more expensive. But if you're just going through a presentation, or if you're preparing for a project that takes a month or 2 months, proof of concept, in your company, in your team, or whatever school project you're doing, I think everyone can probably pay for that. So with that being said, that is the setup for creating this web app. And then that's really it. You don't really need Terraform. You don't really need a whole lot of complication here. Once you set this up, you can just hit deploy, and that will be it. Now let me show you the front-end interface. So on the left-hand side, you see components, and then under components, there are deployments. You click on deployments, you'll be able to see model deployment. Those are the models that we selected before with the Azure OpenAI subscription. Now, if you deploy the app, it will be showing up on the second tab, which is app deployments. And that is the app that I stood up. And once I click on this URL, it will give me this new window. And then I can type in the same question. For example, I can say, what is game theory primer? And now I hit enter. Now it's able to give me the response. So let's take a look at this. Game theory is a modeling tool used to understand the agency or incentive problem inherent in capital structure decisions. Now it's giving me a footnote 1. Let's click on that. Aha, there you go. You'll be able to see lecture 9.pdf part 1. You click on that, it will actually give you the citation. So there you go. Hopefully this is interesting. Hopefully this sheds some lights of a couple of the basic building blocks that you can use pretty much at a low price or sometimes even for free on Azure AI Studio. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe.